All right. Well, let's get started with a prayer. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, source of all blessings, all good things, we give thanks for this opportunity to gather together today to reflect on how we can serve the marginalized and least of these in our community, especially with regard to issues of food insecurity. While there is great affluence in this community, there is also poverty, often in the shadows. We ask that you bless our conversation. Open our hearts and our minds to your spirit, to your guidance, to your wisdom. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're here with us this morning on this Refreshment Sunday in the season of Lent. And fittingly, on Refreshment Sunday, we're going to be talking about food. And we're blessed today to have Kristan Pitts, the director of the Bread and Roses ministry at Trinity Episcopal Church downtown, with us to talk about how that ministry is addressing issues of food insecurity. And Kristan, I thought we'd just start by an open-ended question for those who may not be aware. What is the Bread and Roses ministry? What's the vision and mission of this group?
So, Bread and Roses is an outreach ministry of Trinity Episcopal Church that was founded in 2015. In our founding, our ministry was more so primarily food focused. We were focused on transforming the way that folks acquired, cooked, and related to the food that they ate. We also recognized in the 2 years that I have, or coming up on 2 years that I've been there, that there are these larger questions that are an extension of course, food justice and thinking about ecological justice more generally. So last year we began kind of discerning what could we be doing to kind of further expand that idea, not to just be food justice focused, but also to be ecologically justice centered. So we gathered with a group of friends to kind of revitalize our mission and vision. So I'm going to read it to you. There's actually somebody in the room who participated in that process. I'll let her tell her story later. I don't want to put her on the spot. But this group of about 12 people gathered to discern. What we came up with, a consensus, was for a vision. Bread and Roses envisions communities where people and ecosystems thrive through inclusion, sustainability, and environmental stewardship. And our mission is advancing justice for both people and ecosystems through actions that center food and community. And what that looks like, or how we embody that mission, is through sharing 2 key resources. So on the property of Trinity Episcopal Church, there's about 3 kind of pieces of that property. The Mitchell House, which is a transitional house for families who are transitioning out of homelessness. And then there's also the parsonage, which we rent out to the community. And then, of course, there's the church property. So that demonstration site, we are modeling both ways to grow food, but also ways to design a landscape that benefits all of God's creation, both the people and the plants, the pollinators, all of God's creation. And the second resource that we have is a community commissary kitchen that we rent out to under-resourced food entrepreneurs. So that's just a little bit about what we do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristan. So could we say then that the mission has expanded to stewardship in the broadest sense? So you're thinking about how to grow food, how to give people resources for preparing food in the community, but now also thinking about how do we treat the environment? How do we treat God's creation? How are we good stewards of that? Knowing, of course, that God has given us responsibility and management of the world. Say a little bit more about food entrepreneurs. So you have individuals that you support, and you have a kitchen, a commercial grade kitchen on campus. How do you support these individuals? How do you empower them?
Yes. So one way to build wealth in entrepreneurship, or one mode of entrepreneurship that helps folks build wealth easily, is going into food entrepreneurship. Now, the food industry is a tough business, but it also has like some of the easiest like entryways. So what we do is we help steward the process of kind of navigating like legislation around getting into the food businesses. So like navigating the paperwork for both the Department of Health and the Department of Ag for folks who are starting food businesses or folks who are early in their process. So a lot of times like easier entryways into food businesses are things like food truck businesses, catering, and oftentimes folks want to open restaurants, but kind of the intermediary point between that are those types of businesses I described before. So in order to have a business like that, you have to have a commissary. And now there are luckily some more folks who are thinking about this, but for the past few years, the Bread and Roses kitchen has been like the only commissary kitchen within a 50-mile radius. So it was very difficult for folks who wanted to start like micro businesses or go into food entrepreneurship to have a space to use as a commissary. Since 2015, we've been a space where about 25 businesses have incubated their businesses. Some have grown and gone on to start and have their own brick and mortar spaces. And although I have not been there for that whole process, it's super exciting to be able to support the local economy in that way. And to see the ways in which the church is helping. Because I think a lot of time we think about secular organizations doing this, but I think about the ways in which churches have a lot of space, and how are we sharing our space with the community? So I've been really fortunate and excited to be a part of faith communities who are working to advance justice in the world through sharing their spaces with the people.
Yeah. I mean, so many churches, right, have all this extra room that they're not using Monday through Saturday, and how can we be better stewards of that? And that seems to be part of what drove this ministry at Trinity. Wonderful. Are there any businesses that have grown and have been incubated in this space that we might be familiar with in the community?
So how many of you, by show of hands, are familiar with Pearl Island in the Jefferson School? So they were one of the businesses that started in our space. So how many folks like charcuterie? I'm
charcuterie fans here? Father Rick back there?
Okay. Have any of you heard of peck boards before? No. Peck boards. So they started out as a mail order kind of charcuterie company where they would send you the ingredients and then offer like a workshop for you to then build your own board for kind of work groups and families. But now they have a storefront in downtown Charlottesville. They're another group who started in our space.
Where are they located specifically? Do you know?
I don't remember the address off the top of my
That's all right.
That's my fault. I apologize. But I can get it to folks who would like to know. And then, of course, we have a lot of like caterers who have been in our space. So places like Taste of Tea Catering, Khadijah's Kitchen. She does Afghani food. She's often at the X Park Market. I'm trying to think. We also have, how many folks like sorbet?
The sorbet fans here? All right.
So we have one company called Lovely Day Sorbet. They're seasonal, but they sell their products at Feast during the year. And of course, during the summer, they're at the farmer's market. And another company called Nice Ice. They just started though, so I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with it.
And you've been involved in this ministry for a couple of years.
Almost two.
It's
coming up on 2 this year.
Could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into this ministry? Why did you feel called to lead this group?
So, for folks who don't already know this, I know I've had a chance to talk to a few of you this morning, but I'm originally from Greenville, South Carolina. And in 2021, I graduated from Wake Forest School of Divinity. During that time, I also met my spouse, who is also a student there. So after I graduated, because I'm a year or two younger than her, she took a role in Charlottesville. So that is what brought us here. She was working for the Community Climate Collaborative. And when we first arrived, I was working remotely for a water protection organization called the Yadkin Riverkeeper. The work that I was doing was community engagement work, and I felt like it was disingenuous for me to be doing community engagement work in a community that I no longer lived in. So I began to look for opportunities in this area and saw the Bread and Roses coordinator position posted in a couple different places. So the position stood out to me for a couple different reasons. One, because it was a ministry of Trinity Episcopal Church, which some of you may know is a historically African-American Episcopal church. And then I think in around the 70s or 80s, they intentionally decided to become multiracial. So in the community that I am from, I had never seen it. So that, its history around kind of intentionality around building community really stood out to me. So I wanted to see what it was about. And also, some of the work when I first kind of began to discern my call to ministry in Greenville was with a small nonprofit called Annie's House by Sustaining Way. So I used to live and work on a sustainability demonstration site. So in thinking about the work that we do at Trinity, both with the kitchen and with the gardens, it really stood out to me and reminded me of kind of when I first felt a call. And even though it was I'm Baptist in tradition, but I'll say that my faith formation has been very ecumenical. So the fact that it was an Episcopal church also kind of resonated with me to kind of think about ways to be shaped and formed by other traditions. So it was kind of like this intermixing of all those things, both the things I felt called to earlier, the history of the church and their intentionality around building community across difference, that made me feel drawn to that place. And at the time, during the pandemic, some of our programming kind of declined, and we had a staff transition. So my predecessor ended up transitioning out of the role, and the programs were dormant for a little while. So there was also some opportunities to create some new programming, which I was really excited about and thinking about the things I could benchmark from the previous work I did. So all those things kind of made it a perfect storm, a perfect and beautiful storm. I love storms. I know sometimes storm analogies aren't positive, but I love it. So let me fix that up.
A beautiful storm. So tell us a little bit about the needs in the community. I know you all focus in large measure on the town of Charlottesville itself, although you and I have had conversations about broadening that focus and including our own community as well. And I should say that our parish is partnered with Bread and Roses, a supporter of this ministry, and have volunteered in various ways over the years. And of course, we have one parishioner who's also a board member on Bread and Roses as well. What are the needs in our community with regard to food insecurity? What do you know? What's the latest data on that?
So I think when I think about food insecurity, I kind of think about it holistically. So we're thinking about like folks' access to fresh and affordable food in places that are proximate to them, but we're also kind of thinking about like the ways that income, work, and poverty and those issues, all those things are interconnected. Specifically, I know more about the city than anything else, but our focus has been on how can we help folks in poverty build wealth, and how can we make our local food ecosystem more just and creating more access. So a lot of our work and a lot of our work has been focused on that piece. How can we help low-wealth folks build wealth through food entrepreneurship? But also in thinking about access, we have to think about policy. And we can think about that, of course, on a state and federal level, but it's also important to think about it on a local level. So a lot of the work that we're able to do, because we're a smaller ministry, is through partnership and collaboration. So one of the partners that we have is we're a part of the Charlottesville Area Food Justice Network, which has been working and advocating with the city to kind of just make sure that they are prioritizing, making sure as developers are coming in that housing is affordable, because oftentimes, especially for low wealth families, they're having to negotiate between good quality housing and access to food. So we're thinking about and working with groups who are working on that, but also from a public health perspective. Access to food is something that's important for our whole health. So also working with groups like Move to Health Equity that are looking at the ways in which inaccess to food are kind of impacting social determinants of health as well. So students being able to perform well if they don't have access to nutritious foods, that's a barrier. And kind of working on kind of getting first our church and also other community members involved in advocacy opportunities as well. So policy and public health are things that we often think about in the work that we're doing on a small scale, but hoping in the future to see what are the ways in which we can energize people of faith in the communities that we're connected to within this region for the Episcopal Church. How can we also get them a part of this conversation? So those are some of the things that come to mind immediately after listening or hearing that question.
Yeah, and I know that access, of course, is essential, but there's another step, isn't there, after access, which is also preparation and knowing how to prepare healthy meals from the food that's available. One of the things that we have discovered in our food pantry here too is that if you give out fresh produce, you also have to have guidance on how to use that fresh produce. And I know that's another aspect of the ministry. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So in the time before I was there, we did a lot of work with groups like PB&J, which has shifted their model a little bit. But they used to work with children and families, on nutrition education. So teaching folks more nutritional literacy, essentially. So more about food groups, how to prepare different types of food, how to diversify your diet to create and be more healthy. So a lot of that work ended in around 2020. We continued to do like some virtual programming in collaboration with other folks. But in the past year, we kind of shifted around kind of helping folks kind of think about, as you're growing gardens, things around food preparation, not specifically nutrition based, but a lot of things related to food preparation and also food safety. So those are kind of the things that we've been doing recently. And those things have primarily been kind of, I guess, positioned towards folks who are growing, whether it's growing things for their family or growing things to sell or creating products out of produce that's being grown, again, to sell. So it is related to entrepreneurship more so than anything.
Is the garden at Trinity still something that's part of the program?
Yes, so the gardens are. So there is one of the ways, again, through partnership, that we're able to create opportunities for access to fresh and affordable foods. So all of our produce in our gardens, so we have 2 primary areas for vegetable gardening that have 20 raised beds, but we've also incorporated over the past year, thinking about how can we better utilize all of our property for growing, whether it's to attract native pollinators or to relate to growing to food specifically. So again, we're thinking about the full ecosystem. But all of our produce is redistributed to the Cultivate Charlottesville markets. So during the growing season, which is from March to November, there are weekly markets in the 8 public housing communities in Charlottesville. And Reverend Justin and I, we've had a conversation last year because I was my first year here, I really wanted to focus on learning and getting more familiar with the social and political landscape here, understanding how all the things worked here. But because we were centered in the city, most of our kind of focus was in the city, so much to the point that I didn't really recognize all the things that were happening in the county. So I've been trying to think about what are ways we can extend the work that we're doing through the Charlottesville Food Justice Network to the county more generally. So the network itself isn't interested in that work per se, but what are ways to kind of think about Trinity kind of being a part of expanding that network? And one of the ways I think that can be done is through connecting to other faith communities. So we've kind of been thinking about ways we can do that. And one of the ways has been like hosting some small groups to educate folks and to raise consciousness around food justice issues. It hasn't turned into anything yet, but my hope is that through these small groups that we're hosting, we've piloted 6 over the past 2 years. We're piloting 3 this year, and we piloted 3 last year. 2 of the themes have been, one is sacred land, food and farming, and the second one is called Hunger, a faith and justice response. And these 2 programs that were kind of created by a group called Just Faith have helped be a catalyst for starting a conversation. So we've had parishioners from 2 churches in the city, but also some community members and even some priests from places in the county. So I feel like things are emerging, but we still are thinking about how we can do something or create some direct action opportunities to address like food insecurity in the county and beyond.
Right. I mean, the context is different in some ways, but there are needs around food insecurity as well in the western part of the county. That's great. And it's been very exciting to have those conversations with you, to kind of dream about how we might engage in that ministry here together. So if there are folks in the room who are interested in learning more about Bread and Roses and how to especially volunteer or to support it, what are some of the opportunities that they could engage in, and how could they get in contact with you?
So in the back of the room, I put a sign-up sheet for folks who are interested in connecting with us on a deeper level and also maybe being a part of our mail-out kind of network. So feel free, that's one way to connect with us. On social media, of course, you can connect with us at Bread and Roses CVille. But some of the opportunities for folks, if you are thinking about ways to get engaged, so here's a few. So every Saturday, every third Saturday, we have a community work day. So for folks who are wanting to get their hands in the dirt and get in the gardens, there's that opportunity. For folks who are wanting to learn more about gardening and how to do those things in their own life, on the third Saturday in the afternoon from 2 to 5, we have a partnership with the Piedmont Master Gardeners, and we do workshops called Garden Basics. Each month, there's a different theme. This past month, we kind of looked at like a comprehensive list of garden tools and what things you should have to work in your garden. Those are 2 opportunities. For folks who are more interested in advocacy and action opportunities or even consciousness-raising opportunities, during the summer, beginning in May, we have dinner church. And dinner church gives folks, an opportunity to work in the gardens midweek, but also an opportunity to engage around reflection and this call to why we should be engaged around stewarding our earth well. And then, of course, we have small groups, which we, this year, are going to also do some fall groups. The past 2 years when we've piloted the first groups that were during the winter month and then leading into Lent, the Lenten season. But this year we'll also do a fall group. So for folks who are looking for opportunities for consciousness raising and also some theological reflection that then leads to advocacy and action, those are some ways that you can be engaged with us as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristan. I think it's a good time probably to open up to questions. I'm sure you all have some questions for her about the Bread and Roses ministry. So what are your questions? Yes, back there,
Are
Pam.
you connected at all, or do you connect with City Schoolyard Garden?
City Schoolyard Garden.
So City Schoolyard Gardens is a part of Cultivate Charlottesville, which is where the Charlottesville Area Food Justice Network is housed. So the produce that's grown through that program that doesn't go to children, along with our produce, is also a part of this network of produce that goes to those communities when they do the markets during the summer. So yes, indirectly, yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Any other questions for Kristan? Yes, Amanda.
So how do people find you? People who might be interested in becoming food entrepreneurs or people who might not have access to the food they need. How are they finding you?
I'll be honest, a lot of folks find us through word of mouth. So prior to last year, we only really had the capacity to have about 3 to 5 entrepreneurs in our space. But through the generosity of churches and the community, even the support of St. Paul Ivy, we were able to put in a walk-in cooler last year, which allows us to have more bandwidth and capacity to support more entrepreneurs based on the Department of Health standards. So social media is another way, and then we also share our information with the Department of Health and the Department of Ag. So those 3 ways, kind of through sharing with kind of these government bodies who then share out with folks who may be asking them how to get started, but also through word of mouth. And for the past 2 years, we have been able to offer scholarships for 3 entrepreneurs a year who are starting up. So we offer 3 $2,000 scholarships to first-time food entrepreneurs. So previous scholarship recipients are now serving on our kitchen committee, which also they help us recruit, but again, that's word of mouth. So that has also been helpful. As far as our produce goes, because our produce is redistributed to the markets through Cultivate Charlottesville, primarily through kind of direct engagement by being present at those markets, and also through emails and kind of mailers, so folks know like when the market's happening. So that's how folks have been learning about what we're doing and get connected with us. Good
All right,
question.
so if you want to become a food entrepreneur, you know who to talk to. I think there was a question back there.
Yeah,
Yes, John.
I just wanted that's an interesting niche, the food entrepreneurship angle that's supporting the community, and it's very interesting. Are you actually giving them business classes and teaching them how to handle their affairs with the regulators and things like that? And who are you leaning on to help with that engagement?
So,
Business side, yeah.
So as I mentioned, a lot of what we do is possible through partnerships and collaboration. So we have been working with organizations like CIC, the SBDC, to provide connection to our food entrepreneurs so that they can get the business acumen support that they need. With application processes, because that is often like one-on-one, whoever the coordinator is and community volunteers help support those food entrepreneurs in that way. But business acumen, we've been super excited to be able to have formal partnerships with CIC and SBDC to provide that support.
What is CIC?
It is the Community Investment Collaborative. So they provide resources to general new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, and microloans to them as well. So they have, for the past several years, even before my time, have been working with us with our scholarships to be able to make sure that we're able to provide the necessary mentorship that folks need as they're starting their businesses.
That's great. That's wonderful. What other questions do you have, Kristan? Yes, Gina.
When I garden, I always produce more than we could possibly eat. Do you, and sometimes we can bring it to our pantry here, but that's only once a month. Do Do you take donations from people's gardens for your pantry? I mean, when you go to distribute the food, and if so, what days do you like that dropped off?
So it's kind of been on a one-to-one basis. So two ways you could do that. So the Piedmont Master Gardeners, they have a network of growers who they are regularly in touch with, and they help kind of to distribute. So for us, we work with and around the schedule of Cultivate markets, and they have not produced their schedules yet. So what we did last year when we had a couple of community folks who wanted to also share their produce with us, we sent them the schedule so the day of they could drop that produce off and we would take it to the market for them.
I put my name up here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So if somebody wanted to share produce with you, they could put their information back there and get on the schedule and all that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I know we have some growers here in the audience. We'll catch them. All right. What other questions do you all have? Yes, go ahead.
Are there any existing projects or interest in like urban food forests, like mixed orchards and kind of thing in Charlottesville, Alabama?
So I feel like space is really limited in the city.
Yeah.
So for food forest, I've heard people mention it in some of the network calls that I'm a part of, but because space is so limited, it hasn't been a thing yet. But I wonder, like, the opportunities for the county, that could be a really good opportunity. But I just don't know who's leading those conversations yet. So maybe you may be the one to start that conversation.
My wife and I work with trees. I was curious if there's anything going on.
Cool. There are there's a tree steward group, but I think that I'm not sure if they are offering like kind of fruit trees or not. But I know that they've been working in the 10th and Page community recently, or they were at the end of last year, fall of last year. I haven't heard as much from them recently. But no, maybe you'll be the person to start that conversation.
And Kristan, is this perhaps a way that the surrounding environment can be more connected and partnered with the town if there isn't the adequate space in the town? Maybe there is right around the town.
Right.
And I mean, we're only 5 to 10 minute drive from the town itself. We're not way out.
Right.
So maybe there's a deeper connection here.
I think networks like that work really, really well. As a person who's not from Virginia, I'll say that it's been a huge learning curve for me to understand the ways in which the city and the county are so siloed. I'm originally from Greenville, South Carolina, and we had the city of Greenville, and then we had clearly the county that made up a larger area. And I think about groups like Trees Greenville who are working on projects like what you just kind of led us into. And I would love to see something like that here, but I think we need some players to help lead that conversation.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Kristan? Yes.
Kristan, you mentioned as you do things around the church, in the gardens, the pollination friendly. I think that's an area that would be nice to know more about. And is that something you can tell us more about?
Tell us more about the garden.
Yes. So as we're kind of reimagining our landscape and trying to move away from more traditional aesthetics and kind of consider things like permaculture, we've been trying to incorporate more edibles into our larger landscape, so the church property, the Mitchell House, and the parsonage, but also kind of thinking about ways to incorporate more native plants, to invite more native pollinators and birds, both, I guess, insects and birds, to be present on our property. Because it speaks to and invites a healthier ecosystem. So as I mentioned, on the third Saturday of every month, we have these garden basic workshops. And some of those topics are covered in those workshops. So if you're interested in learning more about like edible organic landscaping, which is something that we're trying to move towards with our property, I know, I'm almost positive in May, there's a workshop on that, that the Piedmont Master Gardeners will be hosting. So consider joining us. It's from 2 to 5. No pressure. But we've worked with a lot of groups who've helped us kind of navigate that. As somebody who's not from Virginia, I'm still getting more familiar with the native plants here. But it just creates a healthier ecosystem if you are familiar with what's native here, and kind of incorporating that into your landscape design. It's beneficial both to pollinators and the people in more ways than one. So that was a good question. Thank you.
So they can follow you on social media, and these events will be advertised there, and then I imagine on the webpage
on the
as well.
website for sure. We're working on both our website and our social media right now. I don't think I mentioned this. My spouse works for an organization called Catch a Fire, which is housed through the Community Foundation, and they connect skilled volunteers with mission-based projects and nonprofits to help them build capacity. So as a smaller ministry that's just kind of trying to help advance food and ecological justice, but in a smaller way than a lot of bigger nonprofits, capacity is often a thing that is a challenge for us. So groups like them are helping us with our social media presence and our website presence. So yes.
All right. Any other questions for Kristan? Yes.
Do you compost?
Yes. So that is a really wonderful question. One of the projects that we worked on last year was building and incorporating a three-part compost system. So we've been doing workshops on that and inviting both our neighbors, our parishioners, and our kitchen tenants to use our compost system.
Well, Kristan, we've come to the end of our time now, but let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for being with us today. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.